You are listening to the Toxic Mold Podcast with Steve Worsley, the toxic mold expert and your number one source for mold consulting and mitigation in the USA. Let's dive into a brand new episode. Before we get started on this episode, here's a not so short disclaimer. While all attempts have been made to verify the content provided in this podcast, neither the podcaster or the producers assume any responsibility for errors, omissions, or alternative interpretations of the issues discussed here. All information stated in this podcast is the opinion of Steve Worsley. Steve Worsley is a mold specialist with over 25 years of experience in the construction and mold industry. The Toxic Mold Podcast is for information sharing purposes only. The views expressed are those of the podcaster and his alone. These views should not be taken as expert instruction or commands. While there may be references to medical conditions and symptoms, all podcast episodes are the opinion of Steve Worsley, and any medical questions or concerns shall be addressed with the appropriate licensed medical professional or professionals. As the podcaster refers to different mold types, please be aware that Steve Worsley is not a microbiologist, and questions concerning mold specifics should be answered by the appropriate professional. Steve isn't, nor does he offer any legal advice. For any legal advice, you must speak with a lawyer. The listener is 100% responsible for his or her own actions. You can check out Steve's books on Amazon. Just go to Amazon and search for author Steve Worsley. You can also take Steve's courses on Udemy or Skillshare, and you can find out more about those at cnccontractorservices.com. Now, let's get to the episode.
Hello, you're listening to the Toxic Mold Podcast with myself, Steve Worsley, and we have my wife, Cassandra. It's getting closer to summertime.
Yeah, closer to Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah, day by day. So today's topic's another interesting one. I hope all of our topics are interesting, but it's what equipment should my IEP have for inspections and testing?
An IEP is Indoor Environmental
Professional.
Okay.
We've talked about this several times. It's an umbrella term. I mean, it'd be like saying medical professional. That's a pretty broad term. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, industrial hygienist, a mold inspector, a consultant. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And honestly, a mold remediation contractor could be classified as an IEP, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about IEPs for inspections and testing.
Okay, so what equipment they should have.
Exactly. And I think it's next week or it's coming up. We're going to talk about what a mold inspection entails. So we're not going to take a deep dive into that. But this is a good episode for our listeners to know, and they can question their IEP. Do you have this, this, and this?
Mm-hmm. So where does somebody start with what equipment the IEP they hire for testing should have?
There's a few that they must have. A ladder, a good flashlight, the air testing pump, a humidity gauge, and a moisture meter. If they don't have those things, I'm not sure how you do inspections and testing. I'm not sure how you would do it.
So what is, I think most people will get what the ladder and the flashlight are for, but what is a moisture meter and why do you think that's important for an IEP to have?
So if I see some wet sheetrock, let's say it's on the ceiling, I use my moisture meter. I use an infrared camera too, and I test the moisture content at the time. So if it's dry, it's going to be, which interestingly enough, most of our listeners are probably like, it'll be 0. It's actually not. Depending on what material it is, it should be below no more than 15%, but it'll probably be 6-7% if it's dry. If it's an active leak, it's going to be 80-90%.
Oh, wow. Okay. So a moisture meter would give you that reading.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. So to answer your question in a simple manner, it's to test the moisture and whatever we're testing.
Okay, and what is a sampling pump? Because you said an IEP should have a sampling pump.
That's how we do our air testing.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So it's a low volume pump. I actually have several different types, as you know. So what do I have? 3 or 4 pumps?
Yes.
They're all different. They're all different prices, but it's literally a machine that sucks air through what's called an aerosol cassette. There's different types of cassettes out there, and I have different types of cassettes, but more or less it's how you do air testing. And if you're an IEP doing inspections and testing, I'm just not sure. I mean, I guess you could do surface sampling or EMA testing, but I'm not sure how you would do an air test without one.
Yeah. So at bare minimum, they need to be able to do the testing. Sampling pump gives you an example of that. They need the moisture meter to see what moisture is going on wherever they're looking. They need a ladder so they can get up into like attics, right?
Yep, and on the roof and maybe in a crawl space. We've had it happen. Remember, we went and did a bid.
Yeah, Army crawl, right?
And no, we went and did a bid in Pinedale. And remember, they had a crawl space, but I assumed there was a ladder. Remember, I had to run to the hardware store and buy a ladder.
That's right. So ladder, flashlight, because there are going to be dark places you're looking.
Yeah,
into,
for our
right?
listeners, by the way, that was to go do a bid. I wasn't there to do an inspection because I would sound like a hypocrite.
Yeah, I was to do a bid. But literally, if you're hiring an IEP and they're coming to do an inspection and testing for you, if they don't have the ladder, the flashlight, the humidity gauge, the moisture meter, and the sampling pump at minimum, you should be concerned.
Exactly. It's a simple question, and it's okay to ask your IEP, like, what equipment do you have? There is nothing wrong with asking that question.
So those are the bare minimums, but tell me if you felt like an IEP was really there with the optimal stuff to do an inspections and testing, what above those bare minimums would they also have?
Well, I'll just kind of go through what I have, and as you very well know, there's always more stuff I would like to buy. But a UV light is very important. So a UV light's going to show, which is ultraviolet, it's going to show like pet stains and any moisture intrusion way better than a flashlight. Now, a flashlight, you can see it, but a UV light, it's clear as day to me.
So UV light would show you like if dogs peed in the house.
Exactly.
Do mice pee?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, they do.
They urinate
so
all
you
the
would,
time. Oh, yeah.
I mean, if there was a mice infestation with a UV light, you could see.
Yeah, but most of them, they're not gonna do that in the middle of a room like a dog or a cat would.
But you'd see, if you have a dog or a cat, you would see all of that with the UV light.
Yeah. And most of the time you're not gonna, even like my flashlights are high quality LED flashlights. You're not gonna see it the way I can see it with a UV light.
Oh, wow. So the UV light really gives you a better view.
Yeah, once again, I want to be careful how I say this, but if your IEP doesn't have like a UV light, and I get it, maybe they're brand new, but I would somewhat question, and I guess for our listeners, I'm not telling you have to have an IEP that has a UV light, but to me, it's a very important piece of equipment.
Okay, so UV light, you said what, borescope?
No, I didn't get to the other ones. So I would have a borescope, infrared camera, and a bunch of other things. But a borescope to me, once again, is very important. So we can, look in the HVAC ducts, or I can drill a hole, which usually we do it in the baseboard, but I can drill a hole in the wall and look in the wall cavity.
So the borescope lets you see behind the wall.
Yeah,
right?
and sometimes they're called like you do an endoscopy, like where they stick a camera down your throat. It's the same concept. Colonoscopy, they use a camera, but it's so we can see in areas that aren't visible to us.
Okay, that's
really good. Does that make sense?
What's the difference between a UV light and an infrared camera?
So the infrared camera, price is huge. Infrared is just showing us things as far as temperatures. So a lot of people mistakenly think an infrared camera is going to show mold. It's only telling us temperatures, so for our listeners, they're like, well, why do you have one? We can see where there's missing insulation. If it's an active leak, we were talking about that with the moisture meter, I would pick it up in my infrared camera.
So it shows you like heat maps.
Yeah, it's all temperatures.
So kind of like the movie Predator, where the predators can't see people. Well, you probably haven't seen Predator.
Yeah, I haven't seen
Predator. But Predator, they can't see people, but what they can see is the heat.
Yeah.
That's how they pick up their prey.
Yeah, it's the same concept. They use infrared cameras. Law enforcement does. fire departments do, the military does. Like and they're seeing temperature.
Okay, so definitely if an IEP has the UV light, the borescope, the infrared camera, then that's letting you know they're prepared, prepared.
Yeah, and they're going to be capable. I'm not going to say they're going to discover more than just a home inspector, but they're going to be able to do way more investigations than someone that doesn't have it.
Okay.
I want to be clear with our listeners, and we've talked about this, IEPs listen too. I don't expect a brand new mold inspector to have an infrared camera. They're expensive. Pretty sure the one I have costs like $5,000.
Oh, wow. Whew.
And, you can get them cheaper these days, but they're expensive. They're not cheap at all. And I use a FLIR, F-L-I-R, so it's a good brand name. Like it's a good camera.
Yeah.
But I paid a lot of money for it.
A lot of money. So within IEPs, do you think that they should they should have this basic equipment, hopefully have more, but should people also expect them to be certified?
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
And next week, I think we're talking about a mold inspection and what it entails. And so we'll talk about it a little bit more next week. But even in Utah, Wyoming, Colorado, Idaho, you don't have to be certified. But to me, it's very important. But, and we've talked about this many times, a certification doesn't mean they're qualified either.
Correct. They should be certified and qualified.
Yeah, but it is a good question. Like most people, they're like, well, do they have to be? It depends on which state you live in. But the only states I'm aware of is New York, Florida, and maybe Illinois. Illinois just passed something. But my point is like, you should be certified even if you don't have to be. You're telling your clients like, hey, I took the steps to get a certification. But on the other hand, don't just assume, and we've talked about this before, they have all these different acronyms after their name. Just because they have a bunch of certifications doesn't mean they're qualified either.
Exactly. So then at the end of the day, how does somebody choose their IEP?
You got to call them, honestly. Okay. Call and talk to the person that's going to show up at your house.
Okay.
I mean, it's easy to, for whoever's answering the phones to have a sales pitch, but call the actual person that's going to do your inspection and testing and ask them like simple questions. One of the biggest red flags is ask if they're certified. Mm-hmm. If they say, no, you don't have to be, I personally wouldn't choose them. I mean, I got my certification so long ago, and the knowledge I have is because of my years of experience. Has nothing to do with my certification, honestly. I mean, I can't even remember when I got it, but I think it was like 2006, 2007. It's been a long time ago. So, but my point is ask the IEP. One of the other important questions is, do you understand mycotoxins? Do you know what a mycotoxin is? Mm-hmm. And if they can't explain that, that's a red flag.
What happens if you call a company, let's say a major company or a franchise, and they won't let you speak to whoever is going to come on site to do inspections and testing? Because I get what you're saying, but I also think sometimes when people call companies that are supposed to do this work, they get the salesperson. Mm-hmm. They're not getting the person who's actually coming on site. In fact, the salesperson doesn't even know which service person is going on site.
Yeah, so I understand that. I mean, I do a podcast every week. I have a lot of clients. If you want me to come do your mold inspection, you'll get me on the phone. Maybe it's not a phone call, maybe it's a Zoom call. Either way, in my opinion, I think it's very important.
Absolutely.
And once again, for our listeners, they could be like, well, what if Steve at some point decides to franchise out, which I don't plan on ever doing, but you never say never. Even if you got me on the phone, if I'm not the one that's going to be on site, what good did that do?
Correct. You actually want to speak to the IEP who will be servicing your home.
Yeah. Once again, though, like I'm going to charge you the prices I charge because you're getting my services, not a guy that works underneath me.
Correct.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So asking those questions, what's your call to action for people?
Make sure you hire the proper IEP. Okay. It's one of the most common things I deal with. They hired the wrong remediation contractor, the wrong IEP. They had someone come out and didn't know anything and did a bunch of air tests. Make sure you do your due diligence and get the right person.
That makes sense.
And it's not going to be the cheapest person. I hate to say it, but
you get what you pay for.
Exactly. Exactly. So if you can't find somebody and you're just like, well, I don't know, we offer VPAs, which is a virtual property assessment. The most common question I get is, well, how can you do it behind a computer? You'd be surprised how many times I find mold on a VPA. Yeah. It's very common. Now, I want to be clear with our listeners. Of course, an on-site inspection is the best.
Yes.
But sometimes my VPA was better than whoever they had inspect, who was there on site. Pretty simple, I guess, to me. You can go to our website. I'll put a link in the description of this podcast. But either way, make sure you're getting the right person. So I appreciate all our listeners. Have a great week.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Make sure you go to our website at cnccontractorservices.com and sign up for the mold investigation checklist. Again, go to cnccontractorservices.com and get your free mold investigation checklist today. You can also on cnccontractorservices.com find out more about Steve's courses and books and consultations. Once again, go to cnccontractorservices.com.